Alright, after that last video, we're so close to being done with Halo 3. There's just one last achievement left, the LASO campaign. But what the heck is a LASO though? As much as I wish it was Master Chief walking through the campaign with a lasso, wrangling the Covenant up, it's not that, it's way worse. LASO stands for Legendary, All Skulls On, which kinda explains itself, but I wanted to break it up into its two different parts and give a little more context onto why this is such a hard challenge. The first part is Legendary. The game's set on the hardest difficulty, and I could just stop there, but I wanted to take a quick peek under the hood just to see what exactly changes when you set the game to Legendary. Some of the more obvious changes are the enemies doing way more damage, or enemies having much more health and shields. And then there's some changes that are a lot less noticeable, like projectiles are more likely to home in on the player now, and enemies are more likely to throw grenades and fire special fires with like plasma pistol overcharging and banshee bombs. There's probably a few other modifiers I missed, but from just these modifiers alone, you can tell the game's going to be a lot harder, like enemies are going to be stronger and way more likely to actually try to kill you. But would you believe me if I said this wasn't even close to the worst part about LASO? Like, I haven't even gotten to the second half of LASO, the All Skulls On portion. So, in Halo 3, there's these skulls that add an extra layer of spice to your gameplay. But for LASO, they dump the entire spice rack on you and turn all these skulls on at once. There's 13 of these skulls that are always on during the LASO campaign. Some of the skulls are very subtle, while some are very obvious, but I'll quickly go through each one and explain the effect they have on the game. The first and most obvious skull is Blind. You know that sweet HUD you rely on for your ammo, your health, your radar, all the information you would need? Yeah, that's gone. Get all that out of here. Just throw it all away. Oh yeah, and this crosshair too? Nah, you don't need that either. Also, while we're at it, friggin' throw the whole gun out too. You don't even need to know what you're carrying ever. At first glance, this skull sucks. There are a couple things you can do to get around the limitations of not being able to see anything. Like, you can look at your shadow to see what gun you're holding, or if you're lucky like me and Finny were and we happen to have the same monitor, it had a built-in gaming crosshair that would overlay on the screen so we could aim and actually hit stuff. The skull definitely still sucks because you can't see your ammo, your health, or your radar, but we at least had a way to get around Blind's main limitation of not being able to aim. And then, after Blind, our next skull is Fog, and that disables your radar, which didn't Blind just do that? So I guess this skull just does nothing? Alright, sounds good to me. After that, you've got Iron. In single player, this makes it so when you die, the level completely restarts. But if you're playing in co-op, respawning is disabled, and when someone dies, you only revert back to the last checkpoint. This skull completely changes the way you play the game. Like, normally on co-op, we'd be throwing our bodies at enemies until we die and then just respawn on our friend. But you can't do that here, since there's no respawning. So we had to come up with new strategies for different encounters and actually do the homework and research the ways people have found to get through these levels. This skull was by far the most game-changing skull for us. It really makes death matter in the campaign, and it forced us to change up the way we played entirely. Next up, you got Black Eye. This one sucks. It makes it so your shields never regenerate, and the only way to get them back is to melee an enemy. So if your shields break, they're broken forever until you run up to someone and smack them, but that's super difficult because you have no shields, so if you get shot like once or twice, you're dead. And then paired with Blind, you can't even tell if you have shields or not because you don't have a HUD. And so the only way that we found to find out if we had shields was just looking at each other and asking like, hey, do I have shields? Oh, you don't have shields? Okay. And then one last annoying part about Black Eye is that when you melee someone, it doesn't instantly fill your shields, it only starts the regen. So if you immediately get shot after meleeing someone, it'll stop your regens and you're back to like no shields again. So overall, this skull just means you're going to be sitting at like 0 shields for most of the campaign, and if anything just breathes on you, you die. The next batch of skulls affects the enemy's stats. Up first, you've got Thunderstorm, which upgrades every enemy to the highest rank in their class. Like, for instance, the orange and red grunts become this paler grunt ultra, the regular brutes turn into this slightly more armored brute, and the brute captains turn into this lighter blue captain. All these upgraded units come with increased health and shields, which makes them all slightly harder to kill. Then there's Mythic, which doubles the enemy's health and shields. And these values were already increased by putting the game on Legendary, as well as by Thunderstorm, but Mythic just takes it one step further and makes every enemy that much beefier. And then on top of those two skulls, you've got Tilt as well, which increases the enemy's weaknesses and resistances. This means bullets will do way less damage to shields, while plasma weapons will do way more damage to shields. And the reverse is also true in that bullets do more damage to health while plasma does less. So this skull boils down to just having to use a plasma weapon on shielded enemies because unshielded enemies just die to a single headshot. These 3 skulls combined may sound pretty scary, but they can be nullified pretty easily with just the good old noob combo of overcharging a plasma pistol and then headshotting the enemy, or just smacking them in the back. Then there's a few more annoying skulls that affect the enemy's behavior. The first of these is Tough Luck, where enemies will always try to dodge incoming projectiles. So the enemy AI normally has a random chance to notice incoming projectiles and evade nearby danger. But with Tough Luck on, this gets set to 100% for both of these, so they always dodge out of the way and always sidestep any slow-moving projectiles. This just makes grenades and plasma pistol shots miss 9 times out of 10, but if you have a buddy with you, they can just follow up with another one and it'll always hit because the enemy's just stuck in that dodge animation. And then after that, you've got Catch, where everything is more likely to throw grenades and also drops more grenades. This means you'll probably have an endless supply of grenades, but any enemy you lock eyes with is gonna chuck a grenade at you, so you gotta get really good at dodging. The next skull on our list is Famine. Famine makes it so that weapons dropped by enemies always have half the ammo they normally would. This just means you'll have less ammo to work with throughout the campaign. But this isn't really too much of an issue because weapons found in weapon crates will always have full ammo, so if we ever needed to restock, we just walked all the way back to a weapon crate and refilled there. And then there's the last batch of skulls that are my personal favorites because they don't really do anything negative most of the time. The first of these is I Would Have Been Your Daddy. It just makes rare dialogue more common, so you'll occasionally hear funny quips from the Marines and the enemies. It was nice for a quick morale boost where we'd be stuck in a tough situation and a Marine would say something stupid like, "I throw like a girl," and we both go, hee hee, funny. Another one of the fun skulls is Cowbell. It increases the force of physics effects like meleeing or explosions. So if you backsmack a guy, his body's gonna go flying. Or if you blow up an object, it'll launch it at a high enough speed to where it would actually splatter an enemy and maybe even you, which occasionally led to some laughs when like a traffic cone or something would fly at us out of nowhere and splatter us. And then we get to the final skull that's the only skull that's like a truly good skull, Grunt Birthday Party. You already know what this one does. It makes the little along with like a really satisfying pop whenever you headshot a grunt. And it's just like a straight dopamine hit every time I hear it. It feels great. The headshot explosion actually does a little bit of damage too. It'll stun nearby enemies and do a mini explosion that sets off nearby grenades, so it'll just blow up entire groups of grunts. So this skull just ends up being a nice tool and it also just makes you smile. It's great. And that's it for all the skulls. And now we gotta play the entire campaign with the combined effects of all of these skulls on. So I guess we should just get started. But real quick though, I wanted to give a shout out to Silver, the Halo completionist. He's got guides for every LASO level, and his guides came in really handy when we get stuck at like a difficult spot. So if you're looking to do LASO for yourself, I would highly recommend checking out his videos since they helped immensely. But anywho, let's get started. Right off the bat, we've got the easiest level in the game, Arrival, aka one of the 2 cutscene levels in the game. For some reason, the prologue and epilogue cutscenes are considered levels, so you have to watch them to actually finish LASO. But after that, we kicked off our LASO journey with good old Sierra 117. There really wasn't too much going on in the beginning of the level. It was mainly just me and Finny adjusting to not having a HUD anymore or not being able to see what gun we're holding. But we eventually made it to that first section where there are actual enemies, and we used that speedrunning trick from the last video to jump up this rock and bypass a trigger which would normally spawn 2 phantoms that come and drop like every enemy in that section off. But since we didn't have to deal with that, we just waltzed on through this section and didn't really have much trouble at all. We then got to the next section, which was our first actual firefight. It did take us a little bit to get used to aiming with our new gaming crosshairs, but we just stood back and cleared the area out from a distance and made sure to smack these jackals on the way out so we'd have full shields for the next part. After that, we ran into one problem where we saved this friendly Marine by accident, so he felt like hanging out with us. This seemed pretty cool for like 2 seconds until he started spamming grenades at enemies near us and just blew us up a couple times. What? Wait, that's our friendly Marine, isn't it? We ended up having to gun him down when we respawned every time because he kept killing us with his grenades. But we were eventually able to get past that section and made it to the Banshees Fast and Low section, where we just walked through the water and did some fancy grenade jumping to skip the section completely. Whoa. We're good, right? Oh. After that, we had the Jackal Forest with all the snipers in it. It didn't really give us too much trouble, but I did land this sweet stick, so I was pretty proud of that.
Oh, nice, dude.
And then we made it to the next section where we cleared it out a little bit and then just used these rocks to jump up to the side where the enemies were and then just walked on past them using bubble shields for cover.
Nice. You don't see that one in the videos.
Then we were at the final section where you need to save Johnson, and this turned out to be the hardest part of the level by far. There's really only a couple things that you need to worry about in this section, like these sniper jackals at the beginning that you just need to take out first, otherwise you're just gonna get headshotted and killed. Then there's this phantom that rolls up after a little bit and drops a ton of dudes off, but we just needed to make sure we were directly across from it when it dropped the guys off, since they'd be stuck in their landing animations as they come out of the phantom, and that just made them really easy to headshot and kill. After that, you got the Brute Chieftain and his boys on the bridge. We definitely didn't want to deal with these guys directly, so we just snuck into the building across from them and shot through these tiny little holes we were making in the windows like little baby men. Luckily though, Finney tossed a really well-placed grenade that flung the Chieftain off the map, so we didn't even have to deal with him.
Ooh.
And oh my god! So we just took out the rest of his boys and saved Johnson. And then there was the last issue of actually getting out of the mission. After you save Johnson, a whole bunch of enemies get dropped off, and you just need to wait until a pelican shows up and it'll just blast its way through most of the enemies. So we snuck into this little corner here to hide and chill out until the pelican showed up, but the Halo gods were a little upset with us and threw a bunch of debris in hopes of splattering us.
My god.
Oh my god, a fucking pallet almost hit me in the face.
Oh.
But once the pelican showed up, we just made our way over to it and hopped right on in. And that ended our first LASO level. We were feeling pretty good after this level. We didn't really get stuck anywhere, so our spirits were still high. So we just continued along to the next level, Crow's Nest. Crow's Nest is pretty straightforward. You're just walking back and forth through like 3 different sections of the level and just killing enemies in each one. So we started fighting our way through these hallways, and once we cleared them out, we made our way to the...
Oh, the rat doesn't count.
Yeah, we were a little disappointed to find out the rat doesn't count as an enemy for black eye purposes, so we couldn't use them to restore shields, so he died in vain. Single tear. But after that, we made it to that first hangar area where we wanted to get behind these phantoms since they can't shoot backwards. But while we were sneaking around to the back of the room, we found this underground section that we actually didn't know about.
What the hell's down here? I've never been down here. Holy crap, there's a death chamber.
The death chamber ended up being pretty useful. We could prairie dog and pop our heads out, shoot a guy, then pop back in really quick. But if anyone fell down or got close to the grate, they would chuck grenades in there and just blow up the whole room, so it was really chaotic.
Oh, God.
But for the most part, we just sat in our little death hole and picked off the enemies as they dropped in one by one. And so eventually we cleared the section and made our way out of the room.
Oh, we're good. We're good, dog. We're clean.
Nice. After that, we got to the first bugger swarm room, and Finney snuck off to the side and dropped a deployable cover on a turret so he could shoot through it and gun all the buggers down. You'll have to trust me on this one. I just kind of hid back in this room and watched these Marines throw grenades. I didn't really do anything here. After that, you get back to the starting room and make your way to this room filled with brutes. There's like 20 of them in here and a hammer chieftain. That couldn't be that bad, right? Right? Turns out we were very wrong since we spent like 30 minutes stuck in this room alone. So what Silver's guide had mentioned doing was just walking up to the chieftain and smacking him in the back so you can steal his invincibility and just clear the entire room. But we thought this could be a little awkward to do in co-op, so we just ended up clearing the room normally, and that was just a terrible mistake. And then add on to that, we got a really terrible checkpoint that locked us into a chieftain that spawned with a flare instead of an invincibility. So even if we did kill the chieftain, we wouldn't have that invincibility that would help us further clear the room. So we came up with the strategy of backsmacking these first couple brutes and then just plasma pistol overcharging the rest and headshotting them. And it sounded easy in our heads, but oh my god. Dude, we got stuck in this room for like so long. Oh, the sheer number of brutes made this that much harder, and they'd charge at you as a group or spam grenades, and there was hardly any cover in the room. So we just kept dying over and over. And eventually, after like 50 tries, we were able to clear the room and move on to the coolest skip in the game, the grav hammer skip. You take that grav hammer you got from the chieftain and push this little grate up against the wall, and if you jump and smack the grate with the hammer in just the right spot, you'll propel the grate into yourself, which launches you backwards and skips the entire section. I somehow managed to get this to work on our first try, so it was like a huge relief after sitting in that last room for half an hour. Then we made our way up the elevator to the second hangar section, where our strategy was to ride this pelican to the top of the room so we'd have a vantage point over all the jetpack brutes. This led to a little bit of weird behavior since you're not supposed to be up here just yet, so all of the jetpack brutes just kind of pop in right next to you. They ended up not being much of a problem because they struggled to get on the building we were on, so we just got to shoot them and stick them while they struggled to jump up to us. So we cleared all those brutes out and made sure to grab this active camo for later. After that, we got to this hallway where some jackals were just doing a bunch of weird shit. Like one of them we launched on top of this box, so he had the high ground on us.
Oh, he's mounted a box. He's got the high ground.
Another one was just hiding under this truck for some reason. I don't really know. And then there was a third one that was like hiding under a warthog and spooked us when he made a noise behind us.
Back behind us. Yo.
Oh, what the hell? He's right there. But after that, we used our active camos to just walk up to the bomb and arm it and left the room before anyone even knew we were there. And then we got to that last hangar where we just kind of walked past all the enemies and walked to that final elevator, and that was Crow's Nest.
Let's ride.
I'm out of here. I'm not...
Hit the button, man.
You have to hit the button. After that, we had Tsavo Highway. The level starts off pretty normally. You're just running over dudes with your warthogs for the first couple sections. But while we were going through those first couple sections, we made sure to kit out our Marines with beam rifles and fuel rod guns. That way we'd have a mini squad with us when we got to the first firefight section. So when we actually got to that first firefight section, we made sure to clear out these sniper jackals first, and then we drove our kitted out Marines around and let them clear out most of the area for us. And then we got to our first major roadblock of this level with this chieftain with the fuel rod. So there were two issues with this guy. The first wasn't even the chieftain, it was this stupid Marine we gave our own fuel rod to. They tried to shoot the chieftain whenever we got close, which ended up blowing us up a few times when they'd hit us by accident. I'm following you. Oh shit.
Alright, we need to redo that.
But we fixed the issue by confiscating their gun every time we respawned, since we clearly couldn't trust them with it. And the second problem was the chieftain himself. Our strategy was to backsmack him, but we were really struggling to backsmack him consistently. Sometimes he'd just stand there and let it happen, but most of the time he'd do like a 180 slap right into our faces. But after like 20 tries, we did manage to take him down safely and nabbed his fuel rod gun, which we used to do a trick that simplifies this section. So you're actually able to destroy the barricade from a distance using the fuel rod gun, since the explosions of the fuel rod shots are big enough to go through the barricade itself. So we Hail Married a few fuel rod shots and destroyed the barricade and drove right on through to the next section. After that, we tried to hop that tiny gap in the bridge with our warthogs. Finney was able to do it perfectly while I failed miserably.
Oh my god.
But we at least had Finney's warthog, so we used it to sneak through this little pipe and drove right past this firefight section. And then we got to that big open section with the wraiths in it, where there's a nifty little trick you can do to despawn these wraiths by doing some loading shenanigans. The first thing you gotta do is wait until Johnson says some dialogue about dropping a warthog off so you can punch on through. The dialogue takes about 5 minutes to trigger, so we just kind of sat around and we got to chat about important things like optimal chopper firing techniques.
Also, here's some hot tech. I'm gonna hold it down and you tap it, and we can like see the difference.
It's like double. But after that dialogue finally triggered, that was our cue to head back towards the beginning of the level. This does cause the level to break a little bit, like there will be this phantom in the previous section with a bunch of friendly brutes just hanging out in it.
You wanna go check them out?
They look like they're about to drop an album. They're all looking at you.
Oh boy, it's me.
From here though, we walked all the way back to the first firefight section to hit this loading zone, and then we drove all the way back to the big open area, and hey, look at that, no more wraiths. This meant we only had the choppers to deal with, but we found that since cowbell affected the knockback of our choppers' guns, we could bully these choppers and push them around until they died. And then all that was left after that was this final brute blockade to get past. So first, we used this little rock ramp to boost up and over the first group of brutes. Then we hopped over this little roadside wall. Wait, no, not there, no, oh my god. We hid behind this little wall until the brutes forgot we were there. And once they forgot we were there, we poked our heads out to shoot this shade turret first, and then we popped a few shots into the final barricade. After both of those have been destroyed, you can walk up past this little crack and the level will end abruptly. Nice.
Here it is.
I thought that was gonna be like a really hard trick. Oh, look at the double bubble trouble. And that was it for Tsavo Highway. After that, we had the Storm. This level starts off pretty easy, and we didn't run into too many issues, except for this one brute who decided to get into a ghost.
Some fucker's in a ghost? Are you kidding me? That's cheating, dog.
This made him a lot scarier, because he'd gun us down and could kill us instantly, but we were able to bully him with some plasma pistols until he died. We then took those ghosts into the next big area, plowed through these guys on the left, and then cleared these enemies off this little shack.
Dead? He's dead.
Nice. Watch out for that jackal right next to you. Where's he going?
He's going. Where are you going?
I need to punch him. Hold up. This is where we ran into our first roadblock on this level. So this section has two main threats that make it a lot harder to clear. The first are these ghosts. There's like 4 of them that show up and they're all weirdly aggressive. Like they'll come up this ramp and get up in your face, and all it takes is a couple shots from the ghost to take you down. And then the second threat on top of that is this Wraith on the far end of the area. He's always lobbing shots at you, so while you're distracted by the ghost, he'll get a cheap shot in and blow you up. And we got stuck in this area for like 30 minutes. We had a really terrible checkpoint for this, where sometimes I'd just spawn in and get shot instantly by a ghost and die, or I'd be sneaking around and then the Wraith would just get me because I'm not paying attention to him. But eventually we were able to take out the ghost first and snuck our way over to the Wraith, where Finney hijacked it and brought it back to our little shack. From here we were able to destroy that anti-air Wraith, which causes enemies to come pouring out of the Wraith's original location, but Finney was able to just artillery strike those enemies with his own Wraith, and it was super cathartic after just sitting in this section for like 30 minutes. But after clearing that section out, we took a moment to strategize about what was coming next.
Yeah, we're not going that way though.
This way?
Yeah, we're going this way.
Yeah.
Oh no!
We then moved on to that section with the buggers, or at least I think there are buggers in it, since we snuck over these boxes and skipped the room entirely. After that we moved into the second big area where we hung out with our Marines until the Scarab decided to show up. Oh shit, cool moment. At this point, Finney pulled a Master Chief in the books moment and hopped onto the Scarab by himself while I stood over here and shot its legs for some reason. He didn't really have too much trouble taking the Scarab down, since there's a really neat interaction with Black Eye where the entire Scarab is considered an enemy, so he could smack anywhere on the Scarab's body for a free heal anytime. So using that, he was able to take down the Scarab pretty easily. And after that, we made our way inside to the next section, where you come up on this foundry looking room with a ton of brutes in it. Normally the recommended strategy here is to kill Arbiter so he'll resurrect with a sword or a rocket launcher, and that way he'll clear the entire room for you. But since we didn't have an AI buddy to do all the work for us, we decided to brute force our way through the section by backsmacking the brutes as we ran around the sides of the room. We used this strat to power our way through all the brutes and then got to that final open section with the 2 hunters and a chieftain, and we had a lot of momentum coming from that last section, so we just tried to power our way through this one too, and that clearly didn't work. You're bold?
Try me, bitch, try me. I'm dead.
So we decided to actually deal with this area, and first we wanted to take out the hunters, but they were extremely tanky thanks to Mythic. I think we went through like 5 total BRs on just these hunters, and luckily there's a ton of nearby ammo crates, so we had a nearly unlimited supply of ammo, which let us just sit there and spray into them until they died. So after we took them out, it was just a matter of killing the chieftain. So we threw down a bubble shield for cover, and Finney managed to assassinate him, and then he grabbed the invincibility and grav hammer from the chieftain and got some sweet revenge on the rest of the brutes.
Hey, bitch. It's me.
Hey, bitch. And then finally we had to destroy that big Covenant gun to end the level, and you don't even need to get near it. It only takes 2 charged plasma pistol shots to destroy it, and all you gotta do is time your shots a little, and that's it. That blows up the gun and we're good, and that's the Storm. Oh, is that...
Oh my
That's not in the guide. They don't tell you that one, do they?
Yes.
We then got a nice difficulty break with Floodgate after that. This level is notoriously short and way easier than any other level in Halo 3. So we started off by just walking past most of the enemies at the start, since none of the Flood enemies have guns until later in the level, so you're able to just jump right over most of them. But after we blew through that first area, we got to that first scary part of the level where there's this tiny hallway filled with Flood, and if you walk through it, you're just gonna die no matter what. Are you winning? Oh shit.
I'm dead.
Are you winning in there? But Finney still had that grav hammer from the last level, so he was able to smack some of these Flood through the wall, while I hummed some grenades up and over the wall. And using this, we were able to completely clear that hallway and moved right along. Then we made it outside, where our elite buddies dropped on in. We wanted to help them clear out the Flood, but they ended up being a nice distraction, so we snuck up these rocks on the side while the elites in the Flood duked it out. I then grabbed a sword off of one of our dead elite buddies that I may or may not have accidentally killed. I think I killed him.
Take his sword at least.
But then me and Finney chopped and slammed our way through the Flood to get to that final open area, where we used our usual strategy of just walking past everything, and we were able to sneak into the ship before any of the Flood could get in position to stop us. And that was Floodgate. Oh my god, it only took 14 minutes. Look at that. What the hell? That's wild. Alright, we're at the second half of the campaign, and these are the big boy levels right here. So maybe pause, grab a snack, or maybe some water, since these might go a little longer. Alright, everyone all good? Everyone situated? We're all good? Sweet. Let's move on with the arc. This one starts off with the "My Dreadnought Cannot Rise" area, where there's a bunch of dudes just kind of hanging around, but we walked around the right side here, which meant we only had to deal with a few grunts and some jackals until we got into this little safety tunnel. But it was here I did a big dumb and accidentally smacked Finney instead of this jackal. Oh my god, I punched you. Which caused us some issues for the next section. So our plan here was to sneak up the left side of this rock and bypass the section, but since Finney had no shields, he'd get instantly killed by a single shot, so if anyone even barely looked at him, he'd die. And there was really no easy way for him to walk up and melee someone in this section without getting shot, so we got stuck here because of that stupid punch I did, which really sucked. But luckily, we weren't too far into the level, so we just restarted and made it back to that section pretty quickly. I got splattered by the damn ammo crate. And this time, I managed not to smack Finney in the back, so he actually had shields. So we had a pretty easy time jumping up the rocks on the left and clearing out the guys at the top of the hill. And then we just moved on to the next section. We then got to that Crash Pelican where I was looking for a guy to punch since I didn't have any shields. And right when I found a guy to punch, Finney shot me in the back of the head with a plasma pistol. So I had to immediately find a new guy to punch, but luckily there was this brute just right next to us, so it wasn't too much of an issue and we cleared that section out. And then we both hopped on a mongoose to move on to the next section. Uh-oh. Okay, so we accidentally screwed ourselves a little here. What we wanted to do was get in the mongoose much earlier so these prowlers would jump over us instead of popping over the hill before we got there. But since we had been slow to get into the mongoose, these prowlers were already jumping into the area every time we spawned. And this made this part so much more of a struggle since the prowlers' turrets will just tear you apart if they hit you at all. And so we kept dying over and over here because these prowlers would keep getting the jump on us. But eventually we found we just needed to slow down a little and hug this right side so the prowlers would just drive right past us. And after those prowlers, we wanted to make a beeline right to these choppers so we could hijack them right as the brutes got in them. Finney managed to get in his easily while I struggled a little, but luckily the brute felt bad for me and just sat there waiting for me to hijack him, so I was able to jack his chopper and we moved right along. From there, we drove on to the next section where we tried to splatter whatever we could, but we ended up running into some friendly fire issues on accident. I think that was me shooting you. But once we cleared out that section, we got to that first open section with the Wraith in it. We cheesed this section a little and took everything out from far away with our choppers.
Oh, got a grease too.
This is gaming right here. We took out that Wraith first, and then took out all the brutes, and lastly we took out those anti-air Wraiths.
This is gaming.
Then the Forward Unto Dawn came swooping in, and this level gets a whole lot easier. Both of us grabbed a Scorpion from the Forward Unto Dawn and started blasting our way through everything. Pow, pow, boom, bang, pew, boom, boom. bang, pap. Then once we got outside that first Forerunner building, we cleared it all out first and then made sure to grab some choppers that we were gonna bring with us through the building. Oh, what the fuck? Oh! We then scooted on through to that scarab area, and we wanted to get down to the bottom as quick as possible, which led to some dumb deaths since I was falling behind Finny. But eventually we jumped down to this lower section where some scorpions conveniently pop in, so we both hopped into those and started clearing the area out. But then we actually had to deal with the scarab once he showed up. And this is where we did a neat little trick where if you stay back here, the enemies on the scarab won't actually spawn in, and the scarab will try his best to path up to you, but he'll get stuck on this big rock right here. And so we waited until he got close enough to where Finny could just jump onto the scarab, and since there weren't any enemies on it, Finny had no problem at all just walking in there and destroying it. And now that this outdoor section was all cleared out, we were able to do another sweet trick where we grabbed some choppers and used this little rock ramp to get on top of the Forerunner structure. And from here you can drop through this hole in the roof to get a nice vantage point over the enemies in this section. And once we took everything out from up here, we hopped on down and tried to move on through the door to the next section. But the door wouldn't open, so we assumed we missed some kind of trigger and made our way backwards. And this caused the rest of the enemies in this section to spawn right next to us. Holy shit, we made a mistake. Oh. But we cleared all these new guys out, and this caused Guilty Spark to open up the door for us. Then we got to that sneaky stealth room with all the sleeping enemies, but as usual, our stupid Marines didn't get the memo and started flinging grenades into the room. No, stop, they're sleeping.
Oh, that's why you killed them, huh?
It wasn't our initial plan, but we just sat back and let them clear the room out for us. And these Marines actually carried us for the next few rooms since they were a lot more brave than we were. Like, they'd charge in head first and blow up the entire room while we sat back and just plasma pistoled. And so after that, we got to the cartographer room where I was too busy eating some breakfast and didn't expect Finny to skip the cutscene.
Alright, time to bail. Bail.
Oh, I'm eating banana.
But it was here we had to tragically say goodbye to our Marine buddies. One of them just stood there and watched themselves get stuck, and the other one was too busy mourning the other Marine, so he didn't pay attention to where he was walking. Yeah, don't look at that. So we had to clear this next room out by ourselves, sadly. Our plan was to have Finny sneak off to the right and deal with the turret chieftain, while I dealt with the rest of the brutes in the room. This was proving to be pretty tough since the chieftain had a power drain that lets him one-shot you, and the other brutes would just get up in my face if I didn't take them down quick enough. So this room took us about 10 tries to clear, but eventually Finny got a nice back smack on the chieftain, and then we were able to just clean up the rest of the room. After that, we got to the room with all the stealth brutes in it, and this was a pretty simple room. We just noob comboed them to take them down. And then we got to that final 1v1 with the chieftain, where Finny back smacked him while I threw a power drain at all the other jetpack brutes. This took down most of their shields, so we cleaned up those unshielded guys and took out the rest of the shielded jetpack brutes to clear out the area. And then all we had to do was wait for that pelican to pull up, and we were all done with the arc. Damn, that was a long level. What if one of them tripped and fell there? That's like...
Yeah, game over.
And then we were on to the Covenant, where we started off by hopping out of that pelican and immediately took a hard left into the shallow water. This lets you bypass all the enemies in this section and makes it so you don't have to take out that anti-air wraith. Oh, what the fuck? This does stop the other pelicans from coming in and dropping off a warthog for you, so we did have to walk for a minute to the next area. And this next area was actually really difficult. Like, there's 4 grunts and ghosts that you gotta deal with, but you at least have a Spartan laser and a bunch of beam rifles to help deal with them. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Wraith too. He's lobbing shots at you the whole time you're dealing with these ghosts. And this makes this section such a pain in the ass because you have to constantly keep an eye on that Wraith and make sure he's not going to snipe you while you're dealing with these ghosts. But we came up with the plan that I try to distract and take down the Wraith with my own ghost while Finny dealt with the other ghosts. This way the Wraith wouldn't shoot at him while he took them down, and once he got his own ghost we could team up to take down the Wraith together. And then after that, all that was left to do in this area was clear out this hallway stuffed with dudes. And we got really lucky here, since this brute Austin Powers his Prowler in the hallway and blocked everyone else from moving up. So we were able to fuel rod and laser into the hall to easily clear everything out. And then we got to that first tower elevator room. Here, Finny grabbed this active camo and snuck past everything, which pulled me to him when he activated the elevator. Then we were at the top of the tower and just needed to clear out these brutes. So we just noob comboed them and smacked the chieftain as he charged at us and activated the first tower. Then after we came back down the elevator, I got to have a little bit of fun because I had picked up the grav hammer and invincibility from the chieftain, so I just ran up on this big group of enemies and went ham.
Oh yeah.
This is the only time this entire campaign I've been able to just like walk in and beat ass, get a killionaire or two. But after that, it was time to make our way to the third tower. So we drove on back and hopped in some Hornets and started flying on over. For this part, we wanted to hug the right wall and avoid all the Banshees, but we got to this first corner and we were a little worried since there were a bunch of Banshees just hanging out there. Finney was pretty confident we'd be safe here, so I just trusted him.
He says they don't really fuck with us.
Looks like that guy wants to fuck with you.
The guy wants to fuck. It's so mean.
This sneaking around strat clearly wasn't working, so we just sat back and gunned down all the Banshees from afar. And after the skies were safe, we just needed to clear out the brutes on the ground so we could land safely. And this took forever thanks to Tilt and Mythic making all the enemies super tanky, but eventually we cleared out enough to be able to land and helped our elite buddies clear out the rest. And then we just had to get to the elevator, which was a little tough thanks to this swarm of buggers that shows up, but we found we could throw a grenade or two at the swarm and that'd be enough to take them down. Then we did a nice little buddy boost to get Finney up to the elevator, and he pulled me on up before the hunters could get to me. Then at the top of the tower, we did our usual noob combo to take out the brutes, and Finney stunned the chieftain with a plasma pistol so we could easily backsmack him. And after that, we activated the final tower, which causes the flood to show up, so we booked it to the elevator where I got a little stuck trying to get onto it. I assassinated him. Why did I? Oh. But once we got to the bottom of the elevator, we just dropped a bubble shield and ran right out of the room. And then it was on to that final section where I hopped into the Gauss Hog while Finney took a Scorpion, and we blasted our way through the enemies here. We did have the aid of a very brave Mongoose driver too. He was driving alongside us and doing his best to provide some moral support, and he was just really nice company to have while we blasted our way through. Oh no. But after that, we got to the Scarab Double Trouble Arena, but they weren't even the main threat here. We actually wanted to prioritize these Banshees first, since they could easily destroy our Hornets. But after the skies were cleared, we positioned ourselves so that one of us could shoot the back of the Scarab while the other guy kept its attention. And using that strat, we were able to take down both Scarabs no problem. Then it was just time to storm that final citadel.
Oh shit, here we go again.
When we got to that final bridge where the Flood decided they're good now, we just hung back and cheered them on as they did most of the work for us.
Yeah.
Oh, they just pour on in. Look at these guys. Yeah, go
get them. Go get them, guys. Oh my fuck.
They cleared out the first section of the bridge for us, and we then just snuck on the rooftop for the second section. From here, we wanted to deal with these jetpack brutes in the distance since they'd be a pain to deal with when we moved forward. So we sat here for a little bit and lobbed fuel rod shots at them in hopes that we'd kill them, but we only managed to take one of them down before we ran out of fuel rod entirely. But we at least took down some of their shields. So we walked forward a little to trigger the jetpack brutes and then sprinted back to the checkpoint since we had no precision weapons to deal with them. But when one of them got too close, Finney was actually able to take him out and snagged his carbine. So we were able to noob combo the rest of the enemies on the bridge and then just had to deal with this chieftain. This guy was pretty scary since we really didn't want to go back and redo the last checkpoint. And he was swinging like crazy trying to take out the Flood, so we didn't want to charge at him. Luckily though, he came charging at us eventually and Finney nothing personnel kitted him to take him down. And that was it for the first trip across the bridge. And now we just had to go back across the bridge, but this time the Flood are evil, uh-oh. We initially tried to speed through this part, but we kept dying in the room with the carrier form because one of us, not naming any names, would do something stupid like, I don't know, punch the carrier form and kill both of us. But I eventually figured out I could brute shot jump up to the top of the building and get out of Finney's way while he slammed his way through the room with a grav hammer. But once we figured that out, we were able to clear the first section of this bridge pretty easily, and that was the only part we really struggled with since we had our zappy sentinel boys in the next sections to help clear out the Flood for us. And so we strolled on past the rest of the Flood and dropped into that little trash chute to finally end this level. Oh my god, those last two levels were so long, jeez. But these last two are at least a lot shorter, so we'll start with Cortana. We started off by grabbing these swords so we could easily take down any Flood that felt like getting in our way, and we made our way to the first Flood butthole door and dropped into the first difficult room of this level where, oh my god, Cortana, go away! This room was a bit of an issue because we'd keep getting picked off by random Flood or they'd get the jump on us out of nowhere. Dude, that guy, he fucked you up. But we eventually figured out a good strategy where we hid in this little nook for a second so the Flood guys would come to search for us, but when they came to get us on our right side, we could just sneak out the left and they'd all be behind us. So we were able to walk safely through this section and cut our way through these big old tank forms before moving on to the next area. And here we dropped into this big circular room where our plan was to walk down the right side, pick up this active camo, and walk across to the other side where we could just move on through. But we ended up getting stuck here for a long time since the game gave us a checkpoint after we had let the enemies get into position, so all these ranged forms would just pick us off really easily when we popped out the other side, since they were already set up. But what sucked about this part even more was actually the section immediately after. It's this big ass hallway filled with all kinds of flood, and since there was no downtime between the two sections, the game didn't give us a checkpoint at all. So when we die right before the end of the hallway, we'd have to go all the way back to the big circular room and run that again. But after like 20 minutes of getting closer and closer to the end, we finally made it through to the end of this long ass section.
Keep stabbing, just keep running, you run.
I'm through. Are you good?
Yeah.
Oh. And the next room was kind of a nice reward because we got to do some fancy jumping to get to the top of the room. We first jumped up this little flood wall to get higher up in the room, and once we were higher up, we could use our active camos that we picked up and jump up to this ledge and sneak past all the flood in that hallway. After that, it was just a straight shot to the butthole door, and once we made it through, we moved right along to the reactor room.
Bubble shield. He's out.
Woo, easy. In the reactor room, we had to first get to the other side where Cortana was at. This was pretty easy since there's a convenient line of stalker form flood that I used to chain melee attacks, which kept me healed as I moved to the other side of the room. And that got us to Cortana without any problems at all.
Oh wow, you got
How
really far.
do I need to be Master Chief to open this? Oh shit. Now all we had to do was get out of the level, which was way easier said than done. This was another long section without checkpoints that we got stuck at for a while. The first half of this section requires you to blow up these reactor pylons in the middle of the room, and this was pretty straightforward because there's some active camos right at the start of this room, so you can easily sneak up and activate the button that exposes the pylons. And since Finney had planned ahead, he had brought a brute shot with him, which conveniently destroys each pylon with a single shot. So then all we had to do was wait around until the reactor exploded and we could move along. What the fuck? Physics! So this was a really cool thing that kept happening for some reason. I think it was because of Cowbell's increased knockback from explosions, but it cost us a couple of attempts, so we were getting really frustrated with it. But if we could survive the reactor explosion and not get blown off the edge, there was then the second half of this section where you've now got to run back to the beginning of the level. You started by dropping into that hallway from earlier, and here we wanted to take the high road since it was relatively free of enemies and just makes this section a cakewalk. And then you get back to that circular room where the only issues we had in here were me getting splattered by random things. Like this panel got blown into me one time, and then another time a flood decided to zoom at me at Mach 5.
I'm going. What killed me?
But after a couple of attempts, we were able to make it through the room splatter-free, and all that was left was the final room, where Finney sprinted to the Pelican while I got lost, and he ended the level for us, and that ended Cortana. Oh. Nice. I think I did it too. I don't know.
Oh, you're in the cutscene.
I made the cutscene. Cortana's ass in the cutscene. And now there was only one level left after this, so we hopped right into the final level, Halo. Halo starts off with that big arena around the Forerunner building from Halo 1, and our main plan here was to get on top of the Forerunner building as quick as possible. We first needed to grenade jump up to the middle layer, but this was a little tough because you needed to be able to survive the grenade jump. So if you got shot at all, you need to find something to melee or else you wouldn't be able to survive the jump. And then after that, once you're up on the middle layer, you can jump into this ramp and crouch boost to jump up to the upper layer. But we struggled a little here to get this jump right.
You're gonna want to angle yourself, do a little as far as possible.
I missed the jump, I went a little bit too far. So I just used a fuel rod instead to boost up after giving up on the ramp jump. And once we were on top of the building, we needed to make our way over to Johnson by jumping off the side of the building and then onto the cliffs. And once we got on the cliffs next to Johnson, we killed him, confiscated his Spartan laser, and then killed him again. This causes him to drop a Spartan laser with infinite ammo in it, so we used that to slowly take out all the flood while we were safe on the cliffs. And after the flood were all cleared out, we entered the hallway up to the control room where we needed to juggle some weapons up to the final door. You'll see why we did this in a little, but this brought us to that boss fight with Guilty Spark.
This ring is mine.
He's the bad guy? where all we had to do was dodge the little lasers from Spark until Johnson blasted him in the back, and then all Finney had to do was blast him a few times with the Spartan laser while I got to be the cameraman.
Yeah. Kick his ass.
Oh, this is the easiest boss fight I've ever seen in my life.
Kick his ass.
But after Spark blows up, the game for some reason strips you of your weapons. But if you remember from 30 seconds ago, we juggled those guns over here, so we still had the infinity laser and a grav hammer, which made clearing out the flood in this section way easier. We then made our way outside where Cortana tells you that riddle.
Find the doorway in the cliffs, Chief. The dawn is on the other side.
What do you mean?
The door in the cliffs. The dawn is on the other side.
What do you mean?
So we made our way to the doorway in the cliffs and started moving through that room from Halo 1. And this was a pretty easy room since we still had that infinity laser, so we could easily clear out these packs of flood. And after the hallway was cleared, we made our way outside.
Do you think Johnson left his Warthog outside till we can use it?
That'd be really helpful.
There, Johnson's Warthog.
Oh, thank God.
And now all that was left was the Warthog run. You'd think this would be like the hardest part since there's so much going on during it, but it's a super straightforward drive through most of the sections. It felt like a nice little victory lap for our first LASO campaign, so we were having a great time.
Do it.
Boom! The only section we struggled a little on was this final stretch with these ranged forms. Because of Cowbell, their shots have so much knockback that they'll push your Warthog around like nothing. And this led to some funny deaths where we'd get forced into a corner and couldn't move at all. And another issue we were running into here was my lack of shields. I entered this section without any shields, so I'd keep getting gunned down by the range forms as we drove by. But I asked Vinny to get me in close so I could give them a nice smack, and that kept me topped off as we drove through.
Got him. See you later, idiots.
But apart from that ending section where we had some small problems, we gunned it on through and made sure to wave goodbye to that final grunt on our way out.
There he goes. Bye-bye. Back on it, Chief. Jump. Hey, she didn't say it.
Did not say it.
And that was Halo. It was a pretty easy end to the campaign. And now all that was left was that final level, the epilogue, where Mr. Hood gives that speech in front of the memorial for all the fallen soldiers.
Look at the JPEG guy. Poor guy. They could get a high quality picture of him.
But that's it. We're all done. That's it for LASO. Achievement unlocked. And that'll finish up Halo 3 completely. I'm really not sure if this video made it look easy, but man, this was such a challenging and rewarding journey for us. It was such a long struggle to get through most of these levels, even with the awesome guides made by Halo Completionist, but we powered through and learned the ins and outs of every level in Halo 3. I highly recommend you try LASO if you've never done it before, because it's honestly the most fun experience I've had with Halo 3, especially if you do it with a friend. But if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. These videos are a ton of fun to make, and I'm really thankful to anyone who's willing to watch all of this. I'm still trying to get better at this, so let me know ways I could improve these since I've still got 5 more Halo games to get through. But next up on my list is Halo 4, and I'm really excited to keep moving right along. So I guess I'll see you then. I don't know, I don't really know how to end videos.